I really recommend comparing your budgeted hours for a job versus actual hours and maybe incentivize based off of that difference.
It's time for bookkeeping, beer, and BS. So let's get into, I want to talk about the green space a little bit first and just talk through kind of lessons learned from that, how that applies to the financial stuff. Give us some of like the big wins and the big losses, the big misses, lessons you learned in running. And I mean, you're still running it, like the trials and tribulations faced in that lawn care business that kind of reflects on everything that you do from a consulting and finance perspective.
Sure. I would say one of the biggest things that I have learned and love to talk about is ultimately whatever type of business you're in, particularly a service business, what are you selling, Dan? You're selling your time, right? And so I like to compare that to as time being our inventory. That's what we sell. So imagine what's the inventory for a Best Buy store? It's their computers, their software, their phones. That's Best Buy's inventory. How do they protect that? They protect it by cameras throughout the store. They protect it by an inventory system. And they protect it by having a security guard at the door. You have to show them your receipt before you walk out. So that's how they're protecting their inventory. Our inventory, even though we do mowing, landscaping, or some of your other followers inside the group, whatever they do, window cleaning and things like that, is their inventory is their time. That's what they're ultimately selling. So that's why, in my opinion, it's so important to understand how to protect that, number one, and number two, to make sure you're charging appropriately for it.
Yeah. How do you guys, so there's a ton of conversations in the window cleaning, pressure washing space about paying people commission, paying your employees commission, because it aligns, like as a finance nerd, to me, it de-risks your cost of goods sold or your cost of services sold in a way that it aligns how your customers pay you, which isn't typically by hour, it's by square footage or by number of window panes or some physical metric thing.
Okay.
It helps align that instead of having a disconnect between how you pay your people and how you bring revenue in.
Okay.
Do you find that similar conversation in the green space of how the customer pays versus how you pay that labor that's doing that time?
I'm looking at this as more, I guess I'm really not understanding your question exactly, but I'm looking at it as more of maybe paying commissions to salespeople. Could I kind of touch on that?
So I was thinking like we pay commissions to the technician. So based on their production, trying to maximize or not even maximize, but make consistent how much gross margin you get to keep after you do a job. So trying to like de-risk your P&L from you get paid X and you're going to pay out Y. So there's no disconnect in that. I just see that conversation happening a lot where people are like, I pay my guys hourly, but everybody's talking about going to commission and how do you pay it and how do you track it? And I don't hear that as much in the green space.
Sure. So when we get into profit first, we'll talk about profit sharing and how you can incentivize your team on a quarterly basis with your profits.
Okay.
But what I was going to mention is that on your team, the actual workers that are doing the work and or even salespeople, I really recommend comparing your budgeted hours for a job versus actual hours and maybe incentivize based off of that difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we call it a production rate. So we're looking at how many dollars of revenue you produce per hour. And it kind of does the same thing. If we pay them commission, they basically get a bonus every week because their paycheck, it's like $15 an hour minimum or commission, whichever is the higher. So it's kind of like $15 an hour plus a bonus, or to what you're saying, it would be you produced X, you worked this many hours, because you hit a certain range, you get a certain bonus thing on your paycheck.
Exactly. And we're attributing our team members' hourly wages and things like that into our budget, and then we're projecting on how many hours we're going to be selling a year based off of averages and what we hope to sell. But we definitely look at if we have a 100-hour landscape install job and the guys get it done in 80, there's going to be a 20-hour difference there. So we're looking at splitting that difference and maybe using that as a commission or a bonus to the team and splitting it up between the crews, whether it be the foreman and then the laborers and so on.
What do you do if it's the other way and they're 20 hours over?
Sure.
Are heads rolling, or are you just kind of saying, "Hey guys, you got to get them next time"? How do you manage the downside of that?
So that's when we actually document. We really like to look at what every job brings in, and we're kind of looking at the larger jobs particularly. But we do take an average into consideration. So what I like to do is track the actual versus budgeted hours, say over a period of every 2 weeks or once a month. Okay. Knowing that, hey, sometimes they're going to be a little bit over, sometimes they're going to be a little bit under. But why is that? Did our landscapers run into rock that was underground that the estimator didn't know about? Did the estimator estimate it wrong just by some other reason? Or were the crews just being sloppy and lazy and not being productive? It could have been weather related as well. Yeah. You just necessarily don't know in advance of how the job is going to go, but obviously you're trying to do your best to estimate that appropriately.
Yeah.